Russia's dilemma as rebel forces rise in Syria. Due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Russia cannot fully support the Syrian government in combating rebel forces but also cannot abandon its strategic ally in the Middle East. The rebel group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, formerly the al-Nusra Front and an al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria, along with allied factions, launched an offensive on November 29 to seize control of Aleppo, Syria's second-largest city, capturing several surrounding areas. By December 5, Syrian government forces had retreated from Hama, the country's fourth-largest city, under pressure from multi-directional rebel attacks. The rebels are now advancing towards Homs, the third-largest city, while another group in the south is attempting to encircle the capital, Damascus. The leader of HTS has declared the group's goal is to overthrow President Bashar al-Assad's government. Rebel forces are now only about 10 kilometers from central Damascus, facing the risk of collapse. The Assad government is likely to rely on its ally Russia to halt the rebel offensive. However, Russia is no longer in a position to support Assad's government as it did a decade ago, said Ruslan Suleymanov, a Russian researcher at Ada University in Baku, Azerbaijan. While Russia continues airstrikes to support Syrian government forces, these efforts are insufficient to stop HTS, Suleymanov explained. After 4 years of battles between government forces and rebels for control of Aleppo, it was Russian intervention that enabled Assad to recapture the city in late 2016. The key difference now is that Russia is preoccupied with the nearly 3-year-long conflict in Ukraine. Russia's presence in Syria has been diminishing since then, Suleymanov said. Even at its height, Russia's military presence in Syria was relatively limited. In 2015, when Russian President Vladimir Putin decided to bolster Assad's forces after 4 years of civil war, the deployment primarily consisted of Air Force units. This number is unlikely to increase. At the time, Russia also sent a small contingent of mercenaries, such as the Wagner Group, to support Assad. These forces often engaged in ground combat more frequently than regular Russian troops. Today, however, most of these mercenaries have been redirected to Ukraine, leaving a noticeable gap in Syria. Russia's strategy has been to rely on Syrian, Iranian, and Shiite militias to fight on the ground while providing air support, rather than deploying its own troops in direct combat, wrote American analysts Michael Kaufman and Matthew Rojansky in a 2018 study published by the U.S. Army War College Press. Iran and its allied forces, such as Hezbollah, which have been key ground supporters for Assad throughout the civil war, have also been significantly weakened by ongoing conflicts with Israel. HTS and its allies appear to see this as a prime opportunity to launch decisive offensives. It remains uncertain whether Russia can fill the void left in Syria's ground forces. But increasing support for Assad without weakening Russian forces in Ukraine will be extremely difficult, said Pavel Luzin, an expert on Russian armed forces. Since the Ukraine conflict began in February 2022, reports suggest that Russia has withdrawn some fighter jets from Syria and relocated its S-300 air defense systems to a port near Crimea. Russian troops stationed in Syria are now concentrated in major bases rather than smaller outposts. The redeployment of experienced mercenaries to Ukraine has further diminished Russia's influence in the region, according to observers. Suleymanov noted that while the Kremlin still maintains a small number of mercenaries in Syria, these personnel are engaged in tasks such as securing oil facilities rather than combat operations. Even with its focus on Ukraine, President Putin will not abandon Assad's government, Suleymanov emphasized. On December 7, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that Moscow would fight HTS by all available means. We will support the legitimate government in Syria while also promoting dialogue with the opposition, Lavrov said. Russia's 2 key bases in Syria, Tartus naval base, which ensures access to the Mediterranean, and Maimam air base, which facilitates regional military operations, are under threat. Syria remains crucial to the Kremlin's image as a global power. After the West's unsuccessful interventions in Iraq and Libya, Russia has sought to position itself as a stabilizing force in the region and a pillar of Middle Eastern stability. Russian airstrikes in Syria are intensifying, targeting key rebel offensives. According to Rebar, a pro-Kremlin Telegram channel with 1.3 million followers, General Alexander Chaiko, a former commander of Russian forces in Syria, has been reassigned to the country. Additionally, Moscow is engaging with other major players, especially Turkey, which benefits the most from the rise of HTS. The group is supported by the National Liberation Front, a coalition of Turkish-backed rebel factions. President Putin has spoken with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and representatives from Russia, Iran, and Turkey plan to meet later this week. These will be very tough and exhausting negotiations for Russia, which has already allocated significant resources to Ukraine, Suleimanov said. To protect Assad's government, Russia will need to redirect resources to the Middle East, and this will certainly not be an easy decision.